everybody. Welcome to another episode from Your Own Pathway, where we heal, rise, and break patterns that never served us. So let's own it. And I am airing this episode later in December, and we are in the holiday season. So I wanted to do this episode because I wanted to say something. And this episode is to talk about something that often gets dismissed or not talked about. And, under all the Christmas decorations, all the merry cheer, and all the music is, of course, the pressure to be merry. And I want to remind everybody that, the truth is the holidays are not always joyful for everyone. In fact, for so many people, the holidays are the hardest time of the year. And so today's episode from Your Own Pathway is talking about this. This is often the season of grief, where grief becomes louder under all that merry cheer. And oftentimes, this is where absence becomes sharper, where old wounds resurface, where loneliness expands, even in a room full of people, where the weight of expectation passes down on often already tired hearts. So, if the holidays feel heavy for you this year, I just want to say you're not doing anything wrong. You're not doing anything wrong. You're not feeling anything wrong. You're human. You're honest. And if you feel alone in all of this, I assure you, you're not alone. So let's get right into this episode and talk about the holiday culture. The holiday culture and the script that it gives us and the expectations. During the holidays, we're always reminded be grateful, be cheerful, be festive, and especially be okay. But the reality is that December holds a lot of grief, more emotional overwhelm, and more unprocessed pain than any other month of the year. Because the holidays forces us to confront everything that we've lost, everything that we longed for, and everything that we hoped would happen but didn't. And especially for everyone who isn't here. Today's episode is compassionate, trauma informed, and it will explore the different types of grief, loss, and especially how all of this can intensify um, during the holidays. So I'll talk about like the tradition of grief, the ambiguous grief, the disfranchised grief, the estrangement grief, the grief of unmet expectations, the grief of emotional labor, and oftentimes the grief that we don't have language yet for. So this episode is going to be a little bit on the heavier side. And so if you choose to watch this episode, I would say give yourself a lot of time, give yourself a lot of compassion, and don't rush through this. This is one of those episodes where you're probably going to process after all of this. Let's talk about traditional grief. And this is a type of grief that a lot of us are familiar with, and this is the absence that becomes louder in December. This is the traditional grief during the holidays. And this is not just sadness, it's the collision of memory and reality. It's the empty chair, it's the missing laugh, the traditions that feel incomplete. It's the moment when you reach out for your phone to call someone who is no longer there. It's a song that catches you off guard, or it's that ornament that suddenly feels heavy in your hands. Even if it's been years, the holidays have a way of reopening the heart. Oof, I felt all of that. And it's not because you're stuck. It's not because you're not over it. but because your love was real and the season reminds you of that love. Holiday grief is tender because rituals highlight what is missing. It's the sensory memories, it's the smells, the songs, the visuals that pull you back into moments you can't recreate. And if this is your first holiday without someone you love, the grief may feel like a tidal wave. Your brain knows that they're gone, but your body expects them to walk into that room. And I just want to let all of you know you're allowed to feel this. You're allowed to miss them. You're allowed to cry. You're allowed to grieve during the holidays. This is only your way. So, and so that's the traditional holiday grief that we're talking about. And so, moving on, I want to talk about the different type of griefs that maybe we feel but don't know what to call it. And so, the second part that I am going to talk about is the ambiguous grief. This is missing someone who is still alive. So, ambiguous grief is a grief of someone who is still here physically, but no longer here emotionally, relationally, and psychologically. And this grief shows up when a parent's memory changes, a partner becomes emotionally distant, a sibling drifts away, a child stops calling, a friendship that fades without clarity, addiction, mental illness that changes the relationship, or a once close bond that becomes unrecognizable. Ambiguous grief is painful because there's often no closure, there's no goodbye, there is no explanation. So you're mourning what should have been, or what you hoped could be, without the clean edges final, of feeling finality. And the holidays amplify this grief by showing you what other people seem to have. And again, you're allowed to grieve the relationships that didn't grow with you. You're allowed to mourn the emotional closeness you never received. You're allowed to acknowledge that this relationship here is not whole anymore. And most especially, your grief is real, even if no one sees that. So that is ambiguous grief. The third grief that I want to discuss is called disfranchised grief. And this is a kind of grief that society minimizes. Disfranchised grief is grief that society refuses to validate. And this often includes miscarriage, infertility, losing a pet. It's like, oh, but they're just a pet. It's like, nope, they're my family. A divorce, a breakup, a job loss, losing a home, losing your church or your community, losing your identity, losing your sense of stability. I think 2025, a lot of us are feeling this. And being the strong one with no one to turn to. And in this type of grief, people often like to say, like, oh, it wasn't that serious, or you'll get over it, or, it could be worse. You're lucky compared to others. So it really minimizes your grief, to make you feel guilty, to make you feel dismissive about your grief and say, you know what? I'm just overreacting. It really isn't that bad because other people do have it worse than me. But your nervous system knows the truth. Your grief exists because something mattered to you. Your pain is not less than because someone doesn't understand it. And during the holidays, when the world forces cheer, happiness, disfranchised grief becomes even harder to carry. And again, I want to say this, you are allowed to grieve losses that aren't visible. You are allowed to grieve without justification, and you're allowed to feel what is real for you. And so that is disfranchised grief. The next grief, number four, is I think we're feeling and we're seeing a lot of this is the estrangement grief, the grief that often no one talks about. Estrangement is one of the deepest, most complicated forms of grief, especially during the holidays. It is the grief of a parent who no longer speaks to you, a child who has cut off contact with you, siblings who have grown apart, family members who deny the harm they caused. We see a lot of this. I've worked with a lot of clients who went through this. Relationships that were unsafe, the tradition you cannot return to, or the fantasy of family that you never had. Estrangement grief is mixed with relief. And what I mean by this is that it's grief mixed with guilt, it's grief mixed with clarity, and it is grief mixed with longing. So the world pressures you with because it's family or because it's Christmas or just let it go, just let it go for today. But here's the truth: estrangement is often an act of survival, not rebellion. And again, for anybody who is going through this type of grief, I just want to say you are allowed to choose safety over tradition. You are allowed to choose peace over pressure. You are allowed to choose yourself over chaos. And I'm sure a lot of us have never heard that before. You are allowed to choose yourself over chaos. Your boundaries are not cruelty because your boundaries are protection. So that is the estrangement grief. And again, we're seeing more and more of this. Moving on is the grief of expectations. And this is mourning the holidays you hope you'd have. No, this grief is subtle but very powerful. This is a type of grief that maybe it's the partner you thought you'd have by now, or the family dynamics that you dreamed of. Christmas after Christmas, holiday after holiday, you have more hope. You're like, I've been to therapy, I'm doing this now, maybe different, and nothing changes. Or the connections you wish existed, the traditions that you hope to create, or the holidays that you imagined since childhood. And even the life that you thought you believed in now by living by now. I think holidays, especially here in America, they love marketing like paints of perfect fantasy. Everybody's happy and, everybody's joyful. And the reality, most of us know, is it doesn't match that fantasy. It doesn't match that commercial. It doesn't match that Hallmark commercial. Again, you are allowed to grieve the gap between what you imagined and what is. You are allowed to feel disappointed, even if you are grateful. You're allowed to honor the version of life that didn't unfold the way you had hoped for. And again, because you feel this way, it does not mean that you're ungrateful. It's just being honest. And so again, the holidays, so many people want to dismiss your feelings and just say, you're being ungrateful. It could be worse. It can always be worse. And the truth is, it could be better also. And moving on, I feel like this is so much that women carry. And I want to say, this is not, oh, men don't carry any of this. Yes, men carry this too, but let's be honest, women carry a lot of this. It's the grief of the emotional labor. It's the invisible weight that women carry. We're always like, wow, the holidays, as you grow up, you realize, holy shit, all of this happened because of mom. Like, Mom was the glue that held all this together. It's because of mom they had a Christmas. Mom was Santa Claus. And women often carry the holidays, not metaphorically, like freaking literally. Women do the planning, the organizing, the cooking, the buying, the wrapping, the hosting, the smoothing, the the mediating, remembering, tending, managing, all of that, and absorbing the emotional stress that comes with it. And by January and February, that's when we see the highest filings of divorce spike. Because after the holidays, many women realize this imbalance isn't just temporary. This is the emotional structure of my home. And so, holiday labor is grief because it shows you that the emotional loneliness, it shows you the emotional loneliness of inside a relationship. It's like it's always going to be me. It's always going to be me. And I know people are like, well, you don't have to do this, but it's like if I don't do this, who else is going to do it? It's the lack of reciprocity. It's like I can't do this anymore. It's like, well, what about me? It's the lack of reciprocity. It often leads to the absence of the emotional support and the invisible load that women have been carrying for years. And for any women who is listening to this, I want to say to you, you are allowed to be tired. You are allowed to want support. You are allowed to stop doing the emotional work for an entire family. Your exhaustion is not failure. Your exhaustion is evidence of how much you have been carrying. So, those are the type of griefs that a lot of people experience during the holidays. And so, I want to talk next about how to care for yourself during the holiday grief. Holiday grief is not something that you can just fix, it's something that you tend with gentleness and truth. The first thing is give yourself permission. Give yourself permission. You don't have to perform joy. You don't have to feel what you feel without apology. This year I decided not to put up my Christmas tree because I'm like, you know what? It's a lot of emotional labor. And honestly, when I put up this tree, is it going to make me happier? Not really. It's going to be more of a mess for me to clean up. And so this year I decided, you know what? I'm not going to put up my Christmas tree. And I'm glad I didn't put up my Christmas tree. And I don't feel bad that I didn't put up my Christmas tree. So give yourself permission. Number two is create rituals that honor you. This could be small, this could be sacred practices that soothe rather than pressure. Number three, I can never go without an episode without saying this. You guessed it right, boundaries. Set your boundaries. Again, you don't owe anyone your emotional labor or your presence, especially if it means diminishing your comfort for their sake. Number four is, you know what? It is okay. It is okay to lower the goddamn bar. It doesn't always have to be magic. This year may not be the year of magic. You know what? And that's fine. This year for me was not magic because I didn't put up my tree. As a matter of fact, it was peace. And maybe this is a year where you become honest with yourself. Number five is so important is honor your grief. Honor your grief. Let yourself feel without judgment. If you don't want to be fucking married, don't be fucking married, And, it's okay. It's like, you know what? This is a hard time of the year for me. And it's okay to say that. People want to say, well, just let it go. It's like, you know what? No, I honor this grief. It doesn't mean that I let it control me. It just means I honor my grief. Number six is connect with safe people. It's okay to connect with safe people who don't judge or rush you to say get over it or say something that is very dismissing. Grief softens when it is witnessed. And lastly, this one is so important for all of us. Rest. Your body is carrying all of this. So just let it stop, let it breathe, and let it rest. So that is all I have. And I want to close this by saying if the holidays feel heavy for you this year, I want you to remember something. You're not feeling the holidays, you are honoring your humanity. Grief does not make you weak, it makes you real, it makes you feel connected, and it means that something matters to you. Most importantly, you don't need to pretend, you don't need to push, you don't need to match the world's rhythm. You get to honor your own. And in this space, your own pathway, your emotions, your boundaries, your story, your truth, all of it is welcome. Because, we're not about fake facade. You get to feel what you feel. You deserve gentleness, you deserve honesty, and most importantly, you deserve care. You deserve a holiday that doesn't ask you to hide who you are. So, to end this, I just want to say thank you for being here. Thank you for choosing yourself. And most importantly, I know that this episode is hard for a lot of people. Is thank you for letting me sit with you in this season. And I'll see you all next time. And take care. Take care of you. Rest and do what you got to do to feel better. So, most importantly, be tender with yourself. That is all I have for you all today. Take care.